Welcome to Wednesday Wonderings. This is the last in our series of Jesus's miracles, and we end with a spectacular one,
Yes.
the raising of Lazarus. In fact, this miracle would actually cause the opposition to Jesus to rise so intensely that it really led to the cross. And Lazarus himself would be in big trouble with the elders and the Pharisees and the priests. So, you ready to begin?
Yeah, let's do it. We got a big long chapter here.
Long chapter, but a good one. Okay, from John chapter 11, we'll go verses 1 to 6. Now a man named Lazarus was sick. He was from Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. This Mary, whose brother Lazarus now lay sick, was the same one who poured perfume on the Lord and wiped his feet with her hair. So the sisters sent word to Jesus, "Lord, the one you love is sick." When he heard this, Jesus said, "This sickness will not end in death. No, it is for God's glory, so that God's Son may be glorified through it." Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. Yet when he heard that Lazarus was sick, he stayed where he was 2 more days. All right. So there was a close relationship between Mary, Martha, Lazarus, and Jesus.
Yes.
And they sent word to him, to Jesus, to come. By the way, Lazarus' name means God is my help.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's going to really be true with this, isn't
Right.
it? Mm-hmm.
It's neat in Scripture how the names, the meanings, sometimes true. They're true to their name. Jacob, deceiver,
Right.
Those kind of things.
So this sickness will not end in death.
Right.
Now, Bethany was, 2 miles away from where Jesus was in Jerusalem. And their interaction between this Mary and Martha and Lazarus was all over the scriptures, that they appear several times.
Right.
We often think of Jesus' divinity, of course, but here's his humanity. Of all the people in the world, he had a close relationship. He loved these people.
Right. Right.
He surely loved his disciples, but he had a particular love for the Mary, Martha, and Lazarus.
Yeah. Yeah. They were important people in his life, obviously, based on this and other places.
Why do you think he delayed?
I was going to ask you the same thing. I don't know. I mean, I tried to look that up a little bit. Other than maybe just trying to show his power over death, I don't know.
I think throughout the scriptures we see God whittling away other possibilities. In the Old Testament, you see, for instance, Gideon. You got too many men. I wanted it to be clear that what's happened here is of God's doing and not a human kind of solution.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm inclined to think that he delayed because he knew that Lazarus was going to die and that he would truly be dead for 4 days before Jesus appears on the scene.
I mean, if you're dead for 4 days, there's no way that, wait, he wasn't dead or something like that happened.
Right. He was in a coma. No.
Dead, and there was witnesses to that. They'd already prepared his body. So it would only be by a miracle that he was alive again.
Yeah, I think there was a custom or belief that the spirit hovered over your body for 3 to 4 days, but after that, it left. You were dead.
Yeah.
That was a common belief.
Yeah.
Okay, verse 7 through 16. Then he said to his disciples, "Let us go back to Judea." But Rabbi, they said, a short while ago, the Jews tried to stone you, and yet you're going back there. So I was mistaken. I said he was in Jerusalem, but No, he wasn't. He wasn't in Judea. So, excuse me for that.
Yeah.
But Rabbi, they said, a short while ago the Jews tried to stone you, and yet you are going back there? Jesus answered, are there not 12 hours of daylight? A man who walks by day will not stumble, for he sees by this world's light. It is when he walks by night that he stumbles, for he has no light. After he had said this, he went on to tell them, our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I'm going there to wake him up.
Yeah.
The disciples replied, Lord, if he sleeps, he will get better. Jesus had been speaking of his death, but his disciples thought he meant natural sleep. So he told them plainly, Lazarus is dead, and for your sake I am glad I was not there, so that you may believe. But let us go to him. Then Thomas, called Didymus, said to the rest of the disciples, let us also go that we may die with him. The disciples are incredulous that he wants to go back to Judea.
Right.
Again, they didn't get it that Jesus came to die. He came to offer his life, even though they were told over and over again. The disciples were told over and over again.
Right. And it never sunk in to their heads. I wonder too, like they were worried about, the Jews going after him, and that's why be careful. We can't be traveling at night, basically, and just go, hey, we're good. Like, just follow me.
Yeah, and there's that interesting verses where there's 12 hours in a day, and to me, it seems like he's saying there's time enough to do what we need to do.
That's right. We'll be fine. Yeah, that's what I think he's saying too. Have you ever noticed? I just noticed this looking at this time, where he says in verse 11, "Our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep."
Yeah, so other disciples were friends.
Yeah, I just thought that was an interesting thing. Like they had a connection with him too.
Right. Lazarus must have been a very interesting man. And,
right.
Obviously, a believer in Jesus.
Right.
Yeah, to finish the greatest work. What's the greatest work which we can do? And Jesus said it elsewhere. The greatest work is this, to believe in the one whom the Father sent. So Lazarus had fallen asleep. And Jesus would use a term, fallen asleep, that the New Testament would adopt from really henceforth to talk about those who die in the Lord are asleep, which always implies you're going to wake up.
Yeah, yeah.
You're going to wake up, and death is not to be feared as some kind of total ending, annihilation, or something like
There's
that.
There's nothing else after this earth. Yeah.
Well, the disciples misunderstand. So I'm glad I was not there. Jesus said, this is meant to buttress the faith. It's a sign, again, of who Jesus was.
Right.
And who he is. And then we see an interesting Thomas.
Yeah. It's a really interesting piece of this.
Yeah. I take it that Thomas was tremendously courageous, but he was also, like there were some of the other disciples, or the rest of the disciples, having trouble with faith in Jesus. So it was more like, okay, let's go die with him,
Yeah, I got the sense he didn't believe that he could raise Lazarus from the dead.
Right.
That was he just didn't believe that this could happen. And that's not shocking. I mean, if you've never seen it before, oh, you're going to raise him from the dead? Okay. Would we have been any different than Thomas? I don't know. I don't know.
But Thomas certainly had tremendous courage.
Yes, he did. To even speak out.
Yeah, speak out like that and say, let's go die with him. Okay, verses 17 to 27. On his arrival, Jesus found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. Bethany was less than 2 miles from Jerusalem, and many Jews had come to Martha and Mary to comfort them in the loss of their brother. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went out to meet him, but Mary stayed at home. Lord, Martha said to Jesus, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But I know that even now God will give you whatever you ask. Jesus said to her, your brother will rise again. Martha answered, I know he will rise again in the resurrection at the last day. Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me will live even though he dies. And whoever lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this? Yes, Lord, she told him. I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God who has come into the world. And after she had said this, she went back and called her sister Mary aside. Oh, I went on beyond what I told. So let's stop at verse 27. Let's just take on Martha's. So, 4 days, Lazarus was dead for 4 days. 7 days of mourning is usually required. And so, Lazarus must have had a lot of friends as well, because Jews were coming to mourn his death.
Yeah. Consoling Martha and Mary.
Mm-hmm. The contrast between Martha's natural temperament was to be active and busy, to be here and there, to go where the action was. She was an active person.
Right.
Mary, on the other hand, was more introspective and contemplative and reserved. Right. So it's not surprising that Martha went out to meet Jesus.
Right.
And what we see is that, have you noticed this, that it was a reproach to Jesus. If you had been here.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you had been here, my brother would have not have died. But I love verse 22 then, is basically she's saying, but I still believe.
Yeah.
And I know, even now, I know whatever you ask from God, God will give you.
Half reproach, half faith, you might say.
Yeah.
And there was a belief in the resurrection.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
I know he will be raised on the last day.
Yeah.
So we know the Pharisees believed in the resurrection. I think the majority of the Jews in that day believed in an afterlife. Mm-hmm. But there was one group that didn't, and that was the Sadducees.
Right.
And so, but most people did believe in it. So, life and death have different meanings of the way Jesus is using them. Mm-hmm. When he says, "I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me will live even though he dies. And whoever lives and believes in me will never die." Now, he didn't mean physical death.
Right.
He defines life and death differently here in Gospel of John. Life is life with God, having him in our lives, being connected with God, the source of life. Death is having separation from God.
Yeah.
Right. No connection with God.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And that is no life. That is no life. Yeah.
Right. So, Martha's confession, really a confession of faith.
Mm-hmm.
I believe you are the Christ.
Christ, the Son of God.
Mm-hmm. You are the Messiah, the one who we've been waiting for.
Right.
So, now comes Mary's turn, right? Verse 28. After she had said this, she went back and called her sister Mary aside. "The teacher is here," she said, "and he's asking for you." When Mary heard this, she got up quickly and went to him. Now Jesus had not yet entered the village, but was still at the place where Martha had met him. When the Jews who had been with Mary in the house comforting her. Notice how quickly she got up and went out. They followed her, supposing she was going to the tomb to mourn there. When Mary reached the place where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet and said, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come along with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and trouble. "Where have you laid him?" he asked. "Come and see, Lord," they replied. Jesus wept. Then the Jews said, "See how he loved him." But some of them said, "Could not he who had opened the eyes of the blind man have kept this man from dying?" A lot here, right?
Yeah, it is.
So Mary was the one who used that expensive ointment and wiped Jesus' feet with her hair. We've already been told that.
Yeah.
She also says, as apparently a lot of people were saying, "Lord, if you had been here, we've seen you heal many, many people."
Right. And she seemed to be a little more emotional than Martha about it.
A little?
Yeah. I mean, she was falling at his feet. She was weeping. She's her crying and tears, obviously, are kind of the Jews around her are also mourning, and it's a different feel than what Martha had.
Right.
You know, although they had the same. If you would have been here, this wouldn't have happened. You know, Jesus, come on.
And I think what I find really interesting, I mean, I can understand Mary weeping like this, but again, you see pictures of Jesus in the movies, he's almost robotic in a way.
Yeah,
he's
stoic.
untouched by stoic. But this is not what we see here.
No.
He is deeply moved in the spirit and troubled.
Yeah.
So he knew he was going to raise Lazarus, and yet here he is, troubled.
Yeah.
Troubled by the fact, and because death was never supposed to be like this.
That's
the
right.
world was never supposed to be like this. And it is sad to lose loved ones.
It is.
And death is a terrible thing.
And it's sad to watch those who you love mourn. Also, it's hard because you want to help them, and sometimes you can't, other than just being there with a ministry of presence. And so Jesus is mourning the fact that we have death even in this world because of sin, and but the great thing is he can do something about it.
Right. Having been here so long, I see people dying that I've had years and years of ministry with. Julie Guthrie, Paul Guthrie, Linda May and Dick Detmering, Nancy Detmering, Eileen Harper, and it's just so sad that I don't want to be that way. I preach the gospel and believe in where they're going, but it is, to be honest, depressing to see people die. I know people who have had their children die ahead of them. It just doesn't seem right. It can make you sad and depressed. And now we can't stay there because our faith would inform us that God has raised them and will raise us, and that we'll end up in heaven. But at the same time, we're in between in a way.
I always say it's a bittersweet time, because on one hand, that they are in heaven and they're celebrating with Jesus, they're with Jesus forever. But on the other hand, the fact of the matter is you miss them.
Right.
And so it's okay to mourn, but we mourn as those who have hope because of Christ and the faith he gives us.
Now, Jesus wept. And that seems such a simple statement, but commentators have said this weeping was like horse snorting. It was deep moaning and groaning kind of cry. if they're right, that shows even more the humanity of Jesus, that it hurts.
Yeah.
It hurts when someone you love dies.
Yeah.
And even though he knew he was going to raise him, even though we know people are headed for heaven, it hurts so bad.
This is speculation on my part, but I just thought about it. Maybe, yes, he's mourning the loss of his friend Lazarus, but maybe he's looking towards his imminent death too, at some level. We don't know, because they burned the videotapes. We haven't seen the picture. All we have is scripture. But I wonder if there's something about like, I'm going to die and I've got to save these people, and it's going to cost me something.
I think you make a good point, because it says when Jesus was in the Garden of Gethsemane, he was in deep anguish.
Yes.
He was troubled. So facing our own death is also very troubling.
Yeah.
And sad in many ways,
Yeah.
Especially, I think at any time, but especially if you're young and you haven't seen your children or other loved ones
Right.
have those main events of life or something like that.
Right. So there could be, it's just speculation again, but I just thought about that one.
Yeah, so he's having this involuntary groan. Mm-hmm. His heart is wrung. Okay, now we get to the raising of Lazarus. So Jesus, once more, deeply moved, came to the tomb. So it's repeated, by the way, deeply moved,
Right.
deeply moved.
Right.
It was a cave with a stone laid across the entrance. Take away the stone, he said. But Lord, said Martha, the sister of the dead man, by this time there is a bad odor, for he has been there for 4 days. Then Jesus said, did I not tell you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God? What a statement. Mm-hmm. Did I not tell you? Now we're going to see it in a stunning way.
Yeah.
You're going to see the glory of God. So they took away the stone. Boy, wouldn't you love to have been there? Just to see this.
Yeah.
Just to see this. So they took away the stone, and then Jesus looked up and said, Father, I thank you that you've heard me. I knew that you always hear me. But I said this for the benefit of the people standing here, that they may believe that you sent me. Oh, this is powerful. And when he said this, Jesus called out in a loud voice, Lazarus, come out! And the dead man came out, his hands and his feet wrapped with strips of linen and cloth around his face. And Jesus said to them, take off the grave clothes and let him go. Oh my. First of all, it would have been kind of an eerie sight.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
To see this man clothed in all these cloths and
walking, almost feel like some kind of Frankenstein like movie or
I would just love this scene. But if you had any doubts as to who Jesus was, what were the enemies of Jesus? They were out after Lazarus after this, because he was a sign of who really Jesus was.
Right. And they were looking to cover up who Jesus was. I think at some point, if you did away with Lazarus, you kind of hide the evidence, so to speak.
This may be a little stretch, but I think about when a person becomes a Christian, he comes from death to life, right? Yeah. And when the Holy Spirit then comes into our life for sanctification, off comes the things that restrain us, that have enslaved us. Right. And those are the grave clothes.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
It's a great picture.
So off they come, and we are set free. Whom the Son sets free will be free indeed.
That's right.
Right? And so, that's a picture of what will happen later to those who come to faith in Jesus, right?
Right. Yeah, I love verse 39. Martha Lord, there's been an odor, basically. He stinketh.
He's thinking.
It's been 4 days, man.
That's right.
And I worked at a funeral home, and that is true. If you've ever had the opportunity to,
You had that in a sermon too. I
yeah,
think,
he stinketh.
Yeah.
And then you look at this. Some people have kind of wondered about verse 41 and 42, like Jesus praying to the Father, but it's clear right there why they can believe that you sent me, that I'm the Messiah. Mm-hmm. And it's a powerful picture. And then verse 43, Lazarus, come out. We see Jesus do miracles through touch or through different, hey, go do these things, go to the pool of Siloam and wash. And we've seen it by the word. And he just yells out, and Lazarus raises from the dead. I mean, how awesome would that be to see him come out with the hands bound and everything? And
Lazarus will die again.
Yeah.
He will die again. And yet this picture, this image will remain in the people's hearts and in Lazarus' heart, and know that Jesus is the Son of God, the Messiah, that his words are true, that he who believes in him shall not perish but have everlasting life.
Right, right.
It's a good story.
It is.
It is a powerful story.
It is.
And this closes out this series of messages on Wednesday Wonderings. But do not fear. We'll come back again. We'll let you know when it happens.
Mm-hmm.
But this is the end of this series. So thank you for joining us. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for studying the Word with us. We appreciate that.